Also want to remind you that if you have any questions at all during this presentation, please use the chat. Throughout the presentation, we'll also stop intermittently to pause for you to raise your hands as audience members to ask questions, but keep them coming in through the chat. I'll be there to answer any questions that you may have, as well as Leland, who will be our guide today. We'll be together today roughly for about 60 minutes. And I promise you we will have some fun. If there are any technical difficulties, please, by all means, don't hesitate to reach out to me through the chat about those as well. So, got a little bit ahead of myself. Welcome to the Harlem School of the Arts. HSA empowers youth to reach their full potential in the arts, education, and life through interdisciplinary arts training that celebrates the rich complexity of their community. And when we say their community, we mean on a global scale, but of course, here in Harlem and Upper Manhattan as well. HSA is one of those institutions that not only focuses on all disciplines, we have every single artistic discipline under one roof. That makes us a little bit different than other arts institutions in New York City. And one of the amazing things about HSA is our founder, Dorothy Maynor. So she founded the school actually right up the block in the basement of a church, St. James, where her husband at the time was the pastor. So she was in the basement and she said, I really want to start a school of the arts. So at first it started off as St. James Community Center for the Arts. And then later on in 1964 became the Harlem School of the Arts. Dorothy Maynor then took it upon herself to raise $2 million in the 1970s and built this amazing institution, the Harlem School of the Arts, 37,000 square feet that sits right in the side of a hill in Hamilton Heights that is open to every single person in New York City to come engage with high quality arts learning. You'll see some students that are walking in to join us from one of our partner schools behind us. And so a little bit about the master teacher who you're going to engage with today, Mr. Leland Simmons. He is our HSA dance chair, which means that he leads all of the dance programs that we have here at the school, working with young people as little as 18 months old on up to 18 years old, well into their adulthood. Leland comes to us from Alaska. Yes, believe it or not, he comes to us from Alaska, and he's danced a little bit of everywhere. Just a rich, extensive background, working with Barbara Devereaux of the Royal Academy School of Dance in Anchorage, but also coming through the New York City Ballet, Miami City Ballet, Dance Theater of Harlem, the School of American Ballet, the Ailey School. He is the truth, and he is absolutely phenomenal. And we're just really honored to have him here working with us at the Harlem School of the Arts. So enough from me. I do want to remind you, if you do have questions throughout the presentation today, type them into the chat. And without further ado, Mr. Simmons, you're up.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for today's event, our celebration of dance here at the Harlem School of the Arts. I'm Leland Simmons, the chair of dance. I'm very excited to be here today. So what you're going to see today is a celebration of different African-American artists who've made major contributions in the field of dance and dance education. In addition, you're going to hear about the techniques that many of these artists help to cultivate and craft and develop, and many of them trained in. And then in addition, you're going to see some of our students in presentations and works that we've created over the years centered around the techniques, that these Black and brown artists participated in, choreographed and developed. So the first iconic artist that we're going to acknowledge is Mr. Arthur Mitchell. Arthur Mitchell is dear to the HSA family. He was born and raised in Harlem. He grew up right around the corner on Convent Avenue. And, he made major strides in the field of classical ballet. His legacy is so rich, in the sense that he created a home for Black and brown classical dancers to showcase their work with the Dance Theater of Harlem, as he was the founder of that company. Mr. Mitchell, for many people that don't know, he was HSA's first director of dance, right? And so again, as I said, he has a very deep connection, to the school, and as we talk about diversity now, especially in the field of classical ballet, Arthur Mitchell was truly the father of diversity in classical ballet. So what you're going to see now is a short excerpt from a project that we did just last year with the Dance Studio of Harlem and the Harlem Chamber Players. This project was a really, really exciting work as it showcases and talks about Mr. Mitchell's journey and his time here in Harlem and, establishing the Dance Studio of Harlem. It also features our students, and it is titled The Walking Tour. So please enjoy this first presentation.
Arthur Mitchell was, of course, a performer. He had to become a choreographer because there was no money to bring somebody in. So he was actually quite a brilliant choreographer. And when we look at the works now that he created back then in those early years of Dance Theater of Harlem out of necessity, you see such beauty, you see such musicality, you see such sensitivity. Harlem is very different from the way it was in the 1970s. Harlem is becoming a much more diverse community, but organizations like Harlem School of the Arts and Dance Theater of Harlem are really still very much about making sure that people understand that Black people in Harlem have voices and we're doing things and we're making changes happen. So there's a tremendous through line from the founding of these organizations to what's happening in the changing Harlem of today.
The arts ignite the mind. They give you the possibility to dream and to hope. Learn to make the music and the arts part of your life.
Yes, that was our walking tour. One thing I did not mention that the narration of that project was done by Miss Virginia Johnson, who was one of Arthur Mitchell's muses. He choreographed many ballets on her, inspired by her, and we were lucky enough to work with her. So let's continue forward on this celebration. So the next technique and discipline, that we are now going to touch is jazz. Many people often, when they think about jazz and dance as a technique, the people that come to mind is often Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon and Luigi, right? People don't often know that the roots of jazz dance and technique stems from Africa. Long ago, during slavery, enslaved Africans, when they were on the plantations, they did not have access to drums. They did not have access to instruments. And the brilliance of, these people is that during the hardship and the horrific times, they used dance as a way to communicate. And so something that they would do was that they would come together and they would do movements that involved hitting the body, hitting the thighs, smacking the arms. This was their way of communicating through music and through dance. And so dances like the patent juba were developed. And the ring shout, right? And the ring shout was that was a movement and dance that was expressed through polyrhythmic steps and stamping on the floor. Something that you see in Pentecostal and Baptist and apostolic churches nowadays, where you see people catching the Spirit or the Holy Ghost, right? This is what the enslaved Africans did. And they did this in circles, and they used this as a form of connection and communication. Ultimately, this became the foundation for vernacular jazz dance, right? And so as slavery ended, and these people continued, they found movements and created other steps like the Charleston and the jitterbug. These were social dances, that were done on the plantation, but then they evolved and became more elaborate. And so as we continue in the history of jazz, one of the iconic figures during this time to really leave a lasting, indelible impression on jazz and movement, was the iconic Frankie Manning. He developed Lindy Hop, which was a form of swing. He and many others. He was one of the founders of this technique, and he went on to choreograph Broadway, and he went on to do a number of things, really kind of helping shape the early beginnings of jazz and vernacular jazz before it became codified, right? And when I talk about vernacular jazz, again, those movements and steps, were like steps like the Shorty George, right? These are steps that people used to do just as social dance, just having fun, going out, right? Later on, it became more stylized and more technical. Another artist that people don't know about were the Whitman sisters, right? These were 4 African-American sisters who, left a really lasting impression in the vaudeville circuit, right? They were business women. They did their own bookings. They did their own choreography. They composed their own music. They did everything. And at one time, they were the highest paid vaudeville artists in the world, raising to great acclaim. And someone else that has to really be acknowledged for her contributions to the field of jazz and taking jazz global and the basis of the steps and the vocabulary was the legendary Josephine Baker, right? She was born in 1921, and she did so many things. She was a dancer, she was an actress, she was an activist. She fought for women's rights, and she fought against discrimination. She refused to perform in venues that did not support, that supported segregation. She was all about inclusivity and people coming together. She really helped people to see that women, and Black women especially, were sophisticated, intelligent people. And she did this through her art and took this over to Europe and, was recently inducted into the French Pantheon. And so next you're going to see a short little excerpt of our students in our recent holiday show. This choreography is by Jude Evans, and it's titled The Peanut Brigade. What you're going to see is some vernacular jazz with more technical jazz, right? And we talk about the technical jazz. Some of the technical jazz will be the side pulls that you'll see the kids doing that came later through codified technique. And then you'll see steps like the Shorty George, right? And those techniques and those steps were more of the vernacular steps in jazz. So please enjoy The Peanut Brigade by our HSA students with choreography by Jude Evans. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yes. So on August 11th, 1973, a very special thing happened. And that was the day that hip hop, ideally hip hop, came to life and hip hop was born. You know, hip hop as a culture, as a subculture, was developed during a time when people had things taken from them, right? There was an economic decline during that time of here in New York City, and we were in a recession, but through that time, Black and brown young people, knew that they had to find a way to express themselves. So thanks to DJ Kool Herc, hip hop was established at a block party, an after school block party. And so when we look at the history of hip hop as it pertains to dance, we always have to go back to the fundamentals and foundation of breaking, right? Break dancing, was the core and the base of hip hop dance. During this time, it was really, really very much a social and a party kind of experience where young people would come together and they would battle each other. One of the groups that was really, really known for doing just really, really amazing, dope work was the Rocksteady Crew. This was one of the early groups that, came together and had the opportunity of helping get the voice out for hip hop and hip hop dances and the attitude and the swagger. They popularized breaking. They were featured in films. And, what was really great was that they were able to make hip hop something that wasn't underground, right? And so from there, you had artists like Crazy Legs, Richard Colon, right? He was another artist who was featured in movies like Wild Style, and he was born in the Bronx and was a part of the Rocksteady Crew. He now choreographs and teaches and is an ambassador for the origins and the history of hip hop as it pertains to dance. Hip hop made its way internationally, but first it made its way to the West Coast. And so artists like Boogaloo Sam and Don Campbell, they developed movements and vocabulary like poppin' and lockin', right? So they helped to continue to develop the vocabulary for hip hop. Now we have the new school artists, right? Artists like Fatima Robinson and Lorianne Gibson, who took those social dances and took the street dances and brought them to the music videos and, helped to develop and became creative directors for artists like Michael Jackson and Missy Elliott, right? Helping to elevate hip hop to a more commercial and hip hop dance and technique to a more commercial space and venue. And someone I didn't mention on here was another artist named Buddha Stretch, and he was recognized for taking the party elements of hip hop and bringing it to the studio. Prior to him, people were just doing hip hop at parties and clubs, but he was really one of the artists who was instrumental in bringing it into the dance studios. And so now hip hop is not an uncommon thing to see in dance studios. But in the beginning, many studios were looking like hip hop in a dance studio. What? Right? But, that's the history of how things evolve. So what you're going to see next is a short solo by one of our awesome teaching artists, Mr. Kelly Marsh. And it's titled Let It Bump. This work really kind of celebrates the new school elements of hip hop, what we do here now and what we teach our students at Harlem School of the Arts. So please enjoy Let It Bump with choreography by Mr. Kelly Marsh.
Cut the music up, man. Cut the music up, man.
I'm Miss
rhymes and I swear I'm fine. This flow here from 83. From A to Z, you can't f with me. Me and Timberland, man, now be damn. Remember when Light was in love with Sam? I used to be in love with this guy named Sam, but to me, oh my gosh, she was one in a million. I came through cause I rock the show. Whack MCs get kicked in the throat. Keep on sleeping cause you think I'm a joke.
Let it bump.
I'm Missy.
Let it bump.
I'm Missy.
Let it bump.
I'm Missy. I'm Missy on the microphone. I'm Missy.
Let it bump.
I'm Missy.
Let it bump.
I'm Missy.
Let it bump.
I'm Missy. I'm Missy on the microphone. I'm Missy.
Let it bump.
I'm Missy.
Let it bump.
I'm Missy. I'm Missy on the microphone.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yes. So now as we continue on this presentation, we explore the field of tap. So the history of tap, similar to jazz, is one that was originated and has major and great influence by African Americans. And one of the contributors who really helped to develop the foundation of tap was Mr. William Master Juba Lane. He was someone who was born in Rhode Island and eventually made his way to New York City. He moved into a community with many Irish people and immigrants, and in that community, he took the vernacular movements of social dances that Black and Brown people were doing, and he merged the worlds of Irish jig, and he took pennies and put them on the bottom of shoes, and he began developing something that was called tapping. So again, he was a pioneer in the field of tap, and he was one of the first Black artists, one of the only Black artists to perform in minstrel shows. During this time, Black people were not invited to perform in minstrel shows, but he was one of the few that did, and he toured the world and was credited for just being this outstanding dancer and mover. And as I said, he took movements like the patent juba and the ring shout and the polyrhythmic steps and created the shoes and helped to develop the foundation of tap. After Master Juba, someone that was really significant in the field of tap was Mr. Bill Bojangles Robinson. He was someone who was featured in a lot of movies, so he helped popularize and gain exposure and let people see, to help people see tap and, what it was and what it was able to evolve into. And another group that was also very instrumental during this time was the Nicholas Brothers. They too were iconic artists who were in many films and were, just very recognizable figures, often performing in places like the Cotton Club and the Savoy Ballroom right here in Harlem. Now we kind of turn to the new school, and you have artists like Gregory Hines, who helped really help formalize and develop the Huffin style of tap, right, which is a more grounded form of tap. And then you have artists like Savion Glover, who also, explored that kind of tap. And today we have Chloe and Maud Arnold, who are carrying the torch in keeping tap alive. Women who are just really, really making and breaking barriers in this art form. And so what you're going to see next is a solo that was choreographed by Mr. Khalid Hill from the Broadway show Tap Dance Kid. And it's titled Fabulous Feet. And it features one of our HSA alums, Mr. Walter Russell III, who recently made history at the Grammys, winning a Grammy Award. So he was one of the youngest people to ever win a Grammy Award just a few weeks ago. So, here at Harlem School of the Arts, we celebrate our young people, and they are truly continuing to break barriers. And so, yes, here is Walter Russell in Fabulous Feet with choreography by Khalid Hill.
Fabulous feet. Fabulous feet. Fabulous feet. Fabulous feet. Fabulous feet. Sit back, relax, gathering for a treat. We'll entertain and amuse you. So let me introduce you to me and my fabulous feet.
All right. Amazing. So next we celebrate the technique of Afro-Caribbean diasporic dance and West African technique. Here at Harlem School of the Arts, our students have the opportunity of training in these techniques throughout the year. One of our foundational techniques here is Dunham technique, which was developed by Catherine Dunham. For those who don't know, she was truly the matriarch and queen mother for Black dance in America. She did so much, establishing her own company, having more than just one school, but she had schools in Chicago, she had schools in New York, she had a school in Europe, 2 schools in Europe, right? So she was a businesswoman, but she was also an anthropologist. So one of the things that she made it her mission was to travel to the Caribbean during her time in university. And she did her research. And during that, her research in the Caribbean, she was able to codify her own technique, which was the Dunham technique, right? And so this is something that's so important that our children are able to study and learn, because many of our students here are children of color, Black and brown children. So, they're able to study this technique along with West African, really gaining a rich sense of self and history. And so, as I mentioned, she choreographed for movies, and she helped to choreograph Broadway shows. She was just so significant in the field of dance. And it's unfortunate that many people do not know about her contributions to dance. Someone else who was very iconic was the lovely Pearl Primus. She too, like Catherine Dunham, made it her mission to not only train in the fields of African diasporic dance, but to go over to West Africa and study and learn the culture and bring what she learned back to America, creating her own company, you know, and doing field studies in the American South. You know, she was a choreographer, she was a director, and you know, she was someone who also won a National Medal of the Arts in the 90s. So now you're going to see a work choreographed by Jude Evans titled Ebembe. This is a piece that's, again, rooted in the technique of Dunham technique, right? So please enjoy Ebembe, choreography by Jude Evans.
El Alcatraz.
Al son de la tambora, al son de la tambora, de clarines sale el compás, de clarines sale el compás. Yo te diera 5 rieles, yo te diera 5 rieles que no me quemas. Óyeme. Sí, sí, sí. A que no le quema, 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 la que no me quemas. Dígale.
El Alcatraz.
Alcatraz.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So now we go into our final technique, you know, which is modern dance. You know, and when we delve into the world of modern dance, I think there's one individual who, you know, who really kind of reigns as the ambassador for modern dance as it pertains to the Black experience, you know, and that is Mr. Alvin Ailey. You know, he was born in Rogers, Texas in the 1930s. He eventually moved to California, where he began dancing. He trained with Lester Horton, a famous modern dancer and choreographer. He danced for a number of years in Lester Horton's company, and then he eventually moved to New York, you know, where he founded the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. He's received many awards throughout his lifetime, you know, and ultimately something that he did that was just so special and so important was, you know, really sharing his, as he called them, his blood memories, right? And what those were was his experiences and the things that he saw in his community in Rogers, Texas. So, you know, he was really great at storytelling, you know, and through his ballets, letting people see the emotions of pain of Black women, what it was like to be poor, what it was like to grow up in the segregated South, you know, what it was like to grow up in the Black church, right, as an experience, you know, and something that was so special also that he did was really taking those experiences from Black culture and making them universal, right? One of his timeless pieces, Revelations, is a work that has been seen, I think just as much as the Nutcracker, if not more, right? So, his legacy is just so rich, and the work that he did was just so important when it pertains to modern dance. The next person I wanted to acknowledge in this, presentation was the beautiful Carmen de Lavalade. She is so important to me because, she was the one who invited and told Alvin Ailey to take a dance class in California. So had it not been for Carmen de Lavalade, we might not have had an Alvin Ailey, right? And all of the people that he inspired and all of the people that he was able to give opportunities to, right? She was an artist who was not only a dancer, but she was an actress. She was an activist. She received also many awards as well, performed on Broadway, performed at the Metropolitan Opera House, and again, really, really helped to elevate and broaden the visuals of the Black dancer in the field of modern dance. And then the third person in this presentation was Mr. Desmond Richardson, right? Desmond Richardson really, really helped to just show people that, we as artists and Black artists, we can't be boxed in, right? He started off as a hip hop dancer, then eventually became a modern dancer, dancing with Alvin Ailey, then went and danced with Michael Jackson, right? Going back to his hip hop roots, then going to Europe and dancing in major ballet companies, then to come to America and join American Ballet Theater as their first Black principal dancer, then to be nominated for a Tony Award, and then to establish the Complexions Contemporary Ballet Company. So Desmond Richardson is truly an icon, in the field of modern dance and even so much more, right? And so next you're going to see a work titled Fallen Soldiers, and this was a work that I created just a few years ago, featuring one of our guest artists, HSA family member, Mr. Ricardo Barrett, along with some of our HSA students. And, this work really just pays homage to those who we've lost in the fight for Black liberation. So please enjoy Fallen Soldiers. Well, thank you so much for joining us. As we come to the closing, there's just a few things that I want to say, before we head on to questions. The first thing I want to say is that when putting this together, there were a lot of artists that I wanted to include, but I knew that I would be here all week if I included every artist, who's made contributions in the field of dance and dance education and choreography and production and what have you. And so please know that there were more artists that I wanted to include, but I couldn't include everyone. And the next thing I just want to just say was that something that I did not mention was, the intersectionality between many of these artists. A perfect example was how I'd mentioned Desmond Richardson doing so many things, but artists like Catherine Dunham, right? Though I acknowledged for her for the work that she did, within African and Afro-Caribbean dance and what have you, she also was instrumental in the foundations of modern dance and jazz. Another artist was Master Juba, who also was influential, in the foundations, and exposing people to, the jazz vernacular along with tap. Someone who I also didn't mention was Debbie Allen, who crossed the genres in so many different mediums and realms, right? So please know that this was also something that was really, really, important for me to just acknowledge, the depth of these artists, and so I thank you all for joining me today for this portion of the presentation, and please continue to support Harlem School of the Arts.
Leland, thank you so much for taking us on that journey. That was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much again. So I have to ask, which one of these many techniques that you shared with us is your favorite to do?
To do, man.
And to teach.
And to teach. I like it. I like all of them. I really do. I love West African. I love hip hop. I love tap. I started off, taking jazz and doing hip hop when I was little. But really as I got older, I kind of zoned it into ballet and modern dance. I think for me, probably modern dance is probably modern and ballet are probably like my favorites to teach. I think it's so important too, because me as a male identifying artist, being able to be an example and a role model for other young male identifying artists, because I grew up in a small town where there were, I can't even sometimes believe that I'm here now in New York City doing what I do, because the few artists that I grew up with, that young artists and students, didn't make it. They stopped. They were discouraged. They didn't have support, right? And so so doing the various techniques, boys were often shamed for taking ballet and taking modern dance, right? Wearing tights. So I think for me, being able to celebrate everything, but showing those technical those techniques of ballet and modern are probably two of the techniques that I really enjoy sharing and teaching.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And you touched on this just a little bit. When we look at this presentation, this is the epitome of Black excellence, the absolute epitome. What do you feel like it takes or took then for folks to achieve this level of excellence in this particular art form? And what does it take now? If I'm a young person, I'm interested in dance, I'm curious, how do I go about achieving levels of greatness in this particular art form?
I think it's really resilience. I mean, because we have to think about those artists who were studying and training and developing these techniques in the early 1900s, who, they were experiencing discrimination. They were experiencing racism. Catherine Dunham was someone that I didn't get to talk about this too, but appropriation was something that was a big thing during this time, because many of these techniques that we founded, and we as Black people of the African diaspora, many of these techniques we constructed, but unfortunately, we were not given the opportunity to produce the Broadway shows. We were not given the opportunity to get the funding, to run our own schools and to elevate our works. As I said, someone like Catherine Dunham, is so important because, many artists like Jerome Robbins and George Balanchine, they plagiarized a lot of her work, right? And so she didn't get the credit that she was due, and that's kind of been, unfortunately, the history for a lot of these artists, and so I would have to say, though, resilience, because in spite of that, she kept going. In spite of that, she kept firm to her mission and her passion. And so I would say to any young people, you're going to have no's, you might get discouraged, the people might say you can't, but you got to just keep on going. You got to keep pushing. And you got to know that in the back of your mind, there were people who came before you, that you are standing on their shoulders, right? If they could do it, then you can do it, right? And understanding, as I said, they had more opposition than many of our young people now. So.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Resilience. Joy is the act of resistance and resilience that has come through in everything that you talked about. So this is the last question. I'm going to put you on the spot again. Who is your favorite dancer and why?
I can't really pick one. It's too hard. I don't know, because it's so personal for me. Arthur Mitchell is someone who really, really runs deep in my heart, because when I was 13, he came to Alaska with his company, and I auditioned for his summer program, and he auditioned and invited me, right? So he was the one that kind of helped steer me onto my journey here to New York. And now here I am, full circle, running the program that he was the first director of, right? And so for me, it would probably have to be Mr. Mitchell, because I had the opportunity to really come face to face with him and work with him. And, he was just someone who, as soon as he walked in the room, he commanded attention. And so he just always inspired me, and he always just said, doesn't matter. You got to know that when you walk in the room, you belong there, right? Doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter the color of your skin. He would tell that to us all the time when we were trained and I was there. He said, it doesn't matter, you deserve to be here. And so that's something that I try to remind our students here at Harlem School of the Arts. You deserve to be here. You deserve to be on Broadway. You deserve to dance where you want to dance, right? Don't let anything hold you back. So probably have to be Mr. Mitchell.
Awesome. This is the absolute last question, I promise.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about intellectual property being very important for a dancer. How do dancers protect their intellectual property and creation? And how did the artists that you spoke of protect theirs? You talked about Catherine Dunham, and her ideas and her choreography being stolen. So how do dancers protect movement, if you will?
Yeah, that one is very tricky. I know back then it was common, and I think now we're in a time where so many people are pulling from different choreographers and artists. Everyone from Beyonce's team to Rihanna's team, they often pull from dancers and choreographers, and they don't always ask, and unfortunately there really isn't a copyright for dancers. I think the best thing that dancers can do is they can protect their brand, as far as if they start a company and they name a company after themselves or whatnot, that's something that they can do. But when it comes to choreography, unfortunately, there really aren't any legalities that allow you to really kind of protect your work. Now, actually take that back, because I know that with certain companies, certain timeless pieces, they have been able to put those in like a trust. Like there's the George Balanchine Trust. So you can't just perform his ballets without going through his trust. Same thing with Alvin Ailey. I know that there are works that people cannot do, like Revelations. Companies just cannot perform Revelations. So I take that back. Yeah, there actually are. I think there are trusts within these major institutions. I'm not sure how much that costs, but for the smaller guys, the smaller, kind of pickup artists, I don't know. I don't think they really have that kind of protection unless they've had like a particular work that's been performed in say like a theater or a company, where they were able to get that licensing or whatnot. So.
Understood. Leland, this has been a phenomenal journey into the celebration of Black history through the lens of dance. I cannot thank you enough. You're truly a master at your craft, sir. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for taking those questions. Some of us were pretty personal, so I really appreciate you being vulnerable in this space as well. And to you in the audience, thank you again for joining us. If you have any questions in regards to any of the programming that you saw today, please don't hesitate to reach out to hsanyc.org. And if you want to take classes with Leland, don't hesitate to reach out and register for those classes as well. They're on our website. As usual, come back tomorrow, same time, 1 p.m., and we'll be digging into music from the African diaspora, focusing specifically on Dorothy Maynor with our music chair, Yolanda Wins. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one.